Okay, in the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful, I think it's better if we just start the class. I hope every one of you guys have already started working on your presentations, which we have next week, and that you had no problems so far. Of course, as I said, in case if you have any questions or need any further assistance, you can just feel free and send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to help. As you remember last time, we left off at this stage discussing the two of the foreign direct investment options, as you can see also on the slide, which one of them was the greenfield and the other one was acquisition, which we discussed. And okay, Mr. Nasser, yes, you can send us the first draft if you like. Of course, it has to be, of course, I don't need any Word file. I just need a PDF file because it's going to be a presentation, and I'm sure that you guys have made your and are working on your PowerPoint slides. But please just make sure that since you have 10 minutes, you have to organize and arrange your slides accordingly. So in order to just fill out that 10 minutes. I don't want it to be much shorter than 10 minutes or more than that. As I said, like maybe 11 minutes or 9 to 11 minutes will be acceptable, but more or less from that, target will not be acceptable, and it will have marks deducted for that. Okay, great. So then we will discuss these. I'm actually gonna give you one small thing which I wanted to discuss. I'm gonna go through the slides a bit quick right now to finish this one, and of course we have to finish on the next slide, which is related to today's session, because we cannot keep anything pending for next week, because it's very likely that next week the whole class will be dedicated to your presentations and the explanations and questions and answers and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we finish today. Of course, the next slide, which we're going to work on today after we finish this, it's going to be very interesting because it's related to the marketing strategies of these global companies, which is really interesting since you have the name of companies, and I'm sure that you guys can basically feel more connected to what we will be discussing today. Whereas what we did last week and what we will be finishing in this slide, it's more of things that you just have to be familiar with. It's not really that practical in international business, but I just want you to be familiarized with the terms and the things that we discussed. Of course, there is one major issue that we discussed in our previous session, which was the SWOT analysis, which I'm sure that you guys have heard of it before, and I'm sure that you will be hearing from it more and more later on in your other subjects, and even throughout your work experience that you'll be having in the future. The multinational organizations, they must have their own set of organizational structures, just like any other organization that has their own. You have the functional approach, which is related to the different functions and the different departments of every organization, and you have the divisional structure, which is a bit more general, as it's more general basically approach. And sorry, let me just use. Okay. And of course, there's an example which you can see in the bottom, which starts from the board of directors, and which the CEO will be chosen. I mean, from them, and then you have the general manager, and you have all the other divisions below that structure. Then we have the matrix structure, which is basically the general structure of how they will be creating their organizational structure. And as you can see, like, let me just take out the highlighter. As you can see, like, this is for, as we said, it's for international organizations. So you can see here that you have the regional managers, and of course, each company will be completing their own structure by filling out these spots according to how they are willing to set out their business structure. there is one approach which it's honestly a bit complicated, and if you guys want, there's an interesting file which I have, which I'll be sending out when I'm sending this file to you guys, that has further explanations of what we will be discussing about this issue right now. But as I said, it's not really important to know the relation that you're seeing. The most important thing to know about this structure is the names and the terms that are mentioned here, which is like, for example, you should know what transitional is, you should know what multinational or international or global is. Like, generally speaking, it may sound all alike and we may all think that they're all the same. However, there is very minor differences to them. Like, for example, in the diagram that you can see here, which is showing this relation according to the Bartlett and Goschel categories, you have like global companies which have a centralized control, which are basically controlled mainly by their main branch, by their center. If they want to move out towards localized strategy, they will be moving towards transitional, which they will be needing to create a balance between their center and their subsidiaries. So basically, as we discussed, if you remember that when we were discussing the different economies and different countries, like we said, we have the developed countries, we have the developing countries. One of the categories was transitional economies or transition countries. These are the countries that, if you remember, we discussed that there are countries that are moving from centralized, central controlled economies or centralized economies to market-based economies or to open economies. It's the same thing when it comes to organizations. So when we say something about transitional organizations, there are organizations that are practicing and they are trying to shift from mainly being controlled from the center to giving more autonomy to their subsidiaries. Then we also have the when we want to move towards decentralizing our organization and basically to opening up its doors, the global company will go international. International will be that the strategy will be centralized. It will be the strategy that is coming from the center. However, the operations and the basically the processes that they have, those will become decentralized. To some extent, the subsidiaries will have an independence of their own. And finally, when we have the multinational companies, multinational organizations, or MNCs or MNEs, which we were discussing until now, and the term which we were using, they have the local autonomy of the subsidiaries, which I just discussed. Local autonomy of the subsidiaries means that the subsidiaries, they have more independence in making decisions. Of course, at the end of the day, they have to follow certain framework, and they have to maintain themselves within a certain limit. However, at the end of the day, they have more independence, and they can make their own set of rules to some extent, of course. Then there are some things about the globalization that makes organizations to rethink the issue about globalization. MNC strategies have driven globalization, acquisitions to achieve vertical integration, which we discussed in the previous in our previous session. Then we have the acquisition to serve diverse markets, that's to expand your markets and to approach broader markets. You have the network approach to designing supply chains. That's when you are. That's where even the issue of outsourcing comes in. Like when you try to see if you can move out some parts of your processes, or you can cooperate with different organizations globally, even in order to become more efficient in terms of the production of your organization. Many MNEs are now rethinking core competencies and existing business and regions where their performance is weaker. Of course, core competencies will be the main source of power for an organization. Like for example, we said that one thing about the Apple company is its iOS operating system. It's something unique, and we can consider it as core competency. Why? Because it's not, for example, something like Android that even Chinese companies, when they want to, for example, make a tablet or they want to make a mobile phone, they can easily have an access to creating their own, and using Android software. iOS has become something you can somehow call a monopoly as well. So basically, their core competency is that their technology that they're using, it's a monopoly. Other than iPhone, you don't see any other company using iOS. Or even if in the future we will see, for example, XYZ company using the iOS, we all know that this iOS is the same iOS that was created by Apple. So even that company will have to pay money to Apple in order to be using that operating system. And we have the emerging market MNEs, basically the multinational companies that are related to the BRIC companies, the BRIC countries, and countries that fall under the category of emerging countries and emerging markets. Of course, the emerging market MNEs, they are more aggressive when it comes into entering the market and expanding their operations and expanding their market segments. And because they are basically risk takers, they are not risk averse companies like many other companies that are there in the West or more saturated economies, for example, such as, let's say, Western Europe or Japan and South Korea when it comes to Asia. And finally, the conclusion of the slide, which we were covering until, covering last week, and we are finishing right now. The MNEs, or the multinational organizations, their strategies take in both external and internal factors, which of course we discussed, and that's where the issue of SWOT analysis came in when we discussed the issues about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats that organizations face. Internationalization strategies have focused particularly on foreign direct investments and building supply chain links, which of course, again, we discussed this as well, because if you guys remember, we had different types of internationalization that started from exporting, which had the least amount of risk. However, if you want to take less risk, sorry, I need to meet. Everyone, please just be careful that your microphones are muted. Okay, I think it is right now. And then we have the transitional mode that offers a blend of centralized and localized decision making. The MNEs are rethinking global strategies, which we discussed right now, in light of the changing competitive environment, which has the rise of emerging markets and emerging market MNEs. And as I said, like companies, the number one goal of all companies is to make profit. In order to make profit, you need to expand your market. In order to expand your market, you cannot increase the population of your country or the population that lives around your business. You have to grow your business. You have to expand your business. You have to take out your business abroad the boundaries that you have. So the more basically the broader that is your target market, the more chance you have to succeed. And that brings us to the end of the previous lecture. So I'm just going to close this right now. And sorry, nope. Okay. So what we will be discussing today is the marketing aspect of the MNEs and multinational companies and a global firm. The global strategy when it comes to marketing is a plan of action that breaks into three steps, which is positioning the brand of that company and its offerings, which is its products. Then step 2 will be targeting global market segments, and 3 will be devising and creating and basically designing marketing program elements. And of course, this all has to be on a global basis, since it's a global company and it's an international company. And you're not seeing the slides. Does everyone have the same problem? Can everyone see the slides? Because right now I have opened the slides. Okay, then Mr. Nasser, I think the problem probably is from you. Maybe you can leave the session and just come back in. Probably it'll be fixed. Okay, great. So so as I discussed, basically it's really important for, I think the main step of this global strategy will be this step 1, which is all about everything. It's all about positioning. I mean, sometimes you see a brand moves in, for example, to a new market, and their startup is not good. No matter how much money they spend on their advertisement, no matter how sophisticated and how well planned their marketing plans are, if they suffer and if they did not practice a proper positioning in the beginning, most of their efforts will fail. Because it's really important how you start and how you position yourself and how that market basically perceives your organization and your brand and what it believes. Because that's basically when the brand loyalty comes in. So you really want to make sure that you are able to create that sense of loyalty in your market. Global market strategy and positioning. It's the global market segment, which is a group of customers. Of course, we can see from the name itself, segment basically is breaking down the people that share something in common. When it comes to marketing and when it comes to market segment, of course, we're talking about their tastes and preferences. So it'll be the group of customers that share the common characteristics across many national markets. So basically, it's even when it comes to international point of view. Firms target these buyers with relatively uniform marketing programs. This is basically a key term here right now, because we will be emphasizing on this as we go on. Because why is it important for the multinational company to understand the market segments when they want to move into when they made up their mind in order to move into a new market or to a new country or a new location? All of this is because they have to see if they have to find out the things that these people share in common, because it will help them in order to create a standard marketing plan. Creating a standard marketing plan, which we will be discussing in our next slide, it will cut costs in terms of your advertisement, because you don't need to put too much effort in order to create something new in their minds when it already exists. As I said, this may be so general, but we will see it more in detail when we go to our next slide. The example of this, it's giving an example of what a global market segment is. It's saying that, for example, the global youth, so this means that the youth around the world, not only in one specific country or state, the global youth segment who are customers to MTV or Levi's, for example. So that group, they share a common interest when it comes to, for example, watching music on the TV. So the people who are watching MTV all around the world, when it comes to watching basically music, for sure they have something in common. So it's really easier for example, let's see the MTV corporation to create something in terms of its marketing plan once it understands what are the common interests and values of its customers. It's really important to understand this issue. And I'm sure that those of you who have the experience of basically working in fields of marketing, I'm sure that you understand how important it is to understand the local market, and of course, understanding the local market. When you want to go more into details, is understanding the market segments that exist in your target market. Or, for example, the global segment of jet-setting business executives, or in other words, the global segment of rich business people. Then we have the global positioning strategy. So that this is all about the strategy of how that company wants to position itself. It's a strategy in which the firm and the company's offerings and products are positioned similarly in the minds of buyers around the world. For example, Starbucks. Yes, like when it comes to Starbucks, everyone around the world, they already have, and in fact, everyone has a good view when it comes to Starbucks. Like maybe many of us, when we for example, of course, those of us that have Starbucks in our countries, like for example, if I don't know about your country, like Afghanistan, I'm sure in Malaysia there is there, but for example, in Iran, where there is no Starbucks, if you talk about coffee, maybe more than half of the population they don't even know what Starbucks is. But I'm talking about countries that have it. Once you say, for example, let's go have coffee, the first thing that comes up to their mind is like, let's go to Starbucks. Although you didn't say the name of Starbucks, but once you say that let's go have some coffee, immediately, automatically in your mind, you will have the name of Starbucks just popping out. So this means that this company had a very strong global positioning strategy. So this is why it's really important. And basically, if you have a proper understanding of the global market segment, and if you have a very well-developed global positioning strategy, you are very likely to have a very successful multinational organization. Next slide is about standardization and adaptation. This is basically two options that MNCs will be choosing from in terms of creating their marketing plan. Whether they want to accept to adapt and become basically market responsive and basically adapt themselves to the changes and to the preferences of the market, or they simply want to create a standard, let's say, plan for their marketing. Adaptation is when company efforts to modify the element of the international marketing program to accommodate, this is the main part that creates the meaning of adaptation, to accommodate specific customer requirements. So it's adapting to the customer requirements in a particular market. So it means that, for example, if you are KFC moving from the United States to, let's say, India, you cannot come and open your branch offering the same menu that you're offering in the United States. Why? Because the people of India, they have different tastes compared to the people in the United States. For example, they may like spicier food, so you need to make your food more spicy. Or when you move in, for example, let's say to China, where people like more sweeter, basically food, you cannot basically have a successful menu with all spicy foods there. Why? You need to adapt yourself. You need to adapt your product accordingly. Of course, this can be, the culture will be more general, but right now we're talking, the example which I was giving in terms of the taste, it's more detailed. But of course, if you want to look at it generally, of course there has to be culture. Like for example, if you are a company, like let's say the companies that are manufacturers of alcoholic beverages, when they want to move in, unfortunately, some of the Islamic countries they have open doors when it comes to alcoholic drinks. But anyhow, when these companies, when they want to move to these countries, I'm sure that they have to make some changes in terms of their products and in terms of even their advertisement. They don't have an open-handed advertisement. Like even if they're allowed to, for example, have sales in an Islamic country, they have to respect the culture of that country and rules and regulations in that country. They cannot have an open hand in terms of advertisement. They cannot just come on the TV and just, have an advertisement as freely as they can have in the West or in America, for example. Then we have standardization. Standardization, it will be when the company is efforting to make the marketing program and their marketing plan elements uniform, standard, with a view to targeting the entire regions of countries. So basically, they don't see themselves having to accommodate and alter their processes and change their product according to the customer requirements and customer taste. What they want to do and what is important for them is to make their plan uniform with a view to targeting the entire regions of countries or even the global marketplace with similar product or service. So basically, they're not going to change their product or service. It's the same thing. Why? Because they decided that, for example, standardization is something which is good for them and it's better off for them. However, one key term here is that you have to be careful. One offering, one world is not successful and it's not feasible. So you cannot say that, okay, for the whole 7 billion population in the world, I'm going to have one standard, let's say, plan, and I'm sure that it's going to work out. For sure it's not going to work out. Why? Because people are coming from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from even different, let's say, purchasing power. Like, for example, let's talk about Qatar Airlines. Qatar Airlines, they say that we are the global 5-star airline with 5-star hotel in the air, something like that. So it may sound like a standard thing. Of course, they have their standard service or whatever, but even their marketing plan may, in general, seem to be standard. However, if you see, like, for example, when it comes to like giving discounts or when it comes to giving offers or having promotions or whatever, they will to some extent adapt themselves basically to the needs of the people. Or even when it comes to, let's say, the meals that they serve in the airline. When they are flying between Islamic countries, halal food is something that is important for the people and the passengers there. For example, if you are serving food that is not halal, you are very unlikely to succeed in those Islamic countries. So basically, you have to respect that and you have to adapt. So in other words, just to sum up this slide, standardization, it's not something 100%. Even if you want to follow the standardization approach, to some extent, you will need to adapt some of the what do you call specifications of your product or service in order to be successful. And as it says here, which I will highlight in another color because it's really important. Because once you hear standardization, maybe you will just think that, okay, this means that one offering, one world. No. One offering, one world does not make sense, and it is not feasible. It's usually not feasible. And I would even correct that. It's not only not usually, it's for sure not feasible. Then management tries to strike some ideal balance between global integration and local responsiveness. This is somehow explaining the same thing which I said above. The issue of global integration and basically opening your business throughout the world, it cannot be 100%. There needs to be a balance between this and local responsiveness. Local responsiveness is the amount of your efforts in order to change your products and your services according to the needs and wants of the customers. Okay, let me see what some of your friends have written here. Okay. Yes, exactly. This is what you have said, Mr. Nasser. It's correct. Of course, that is putting it in other words. The host country is the place where you're moving out your business to, so you have to respect the taste and wants of the people there. Otherwise, you will not be successful. So we move to the next slide. The next slide will be a short, basically, summary of, and it has some additional points to it of the previous slide. Standardization and adaptation. Standardization, it exemplifies the global integration and is more appropriate in global industries. Okay. It's pursued when similar market segments exist across countries. This makes sense, of course. When you have the similar tastes, when you have the similar culture in a specific segment, okay, and this segment, okay, let's just give the example which was there in the previous slide. It said, for example, let's find it, so it'll be clear for all of us. Okay, here it says, for example, the global youth segment who are customers of MTV. Okay, when it says global, it means throughout the globe, internationally. However, it's talking about one segment. So it's one segment that is throughout the world, which this whole segment have a unique interest, basically. So when that thing exists, you have the option to have a standardized plan. And you can also have a standardization when customers are seeking similar features, which is, again, that same example can be appropriate for this. Products have universal specifications. So, for example, let's say airlines like Boeing or Airbus airplanes. It's a universal product. You don't really have an open hand in changing it as per the, for example, the customer needs and interests. It's a plane. You really don't have much option to change it. And business customers have converging expectations. This has some advantages, which, of course, one of the main advantages of standardization is the cost reduction. Why? Because you don't have to constantly create changes. When you want to adapt, it means that you constantly have to make changes in your product. Changing things in your product means making changes to your product line. Making changes to your product line means that you have to do research. And all of these things, basically, they incur costs on the company, and they will affect the final price, and they will affect the amount of profit that you're making. Another advantage of standardization will be improved planning and control. And of course, you have more control over one unique plan compared to a plan that is constantly changing. And the ability to portray a consistent image and build global brands, which of course, this also makes sense, because when you have one unique plan, when you have one standardized plan, you don't need to keep advertising for it and introducing your changes. Because what is advertisement? What is marketing? Marketing is basically shouting out and speaking out the message of your company. When your message is unchanged, you don't have to keep on basically advertising and giving out that message. However, if you're constantly changing, if, for example, let's say even, okay, we discussed the fast food companies, so we'll just give the example of this. Like on the TV, you can see like how much these fast food companies, I'm talking about the main ones, like let's say KFC, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, or Hardee's, for example. You see them constantly coming on TV and basically advertising their new meals that is coming up. Why? Because it's new meals. They are making changes to their products. They are somehow adapting to the changes of the interests of people. Like let's say, for example, KFC, for examle, and I'm not sure about how it is in Malaysia, but let's say in Dubai, like a few years ago, like they didn't have the option of all you can eat. All you can eat is when you just pay, like let's say a fixed amount, like I don't know, like let's say $10 US. Then with this $10 US, you can eat as much as you want. So then they saw that, okay, the people, like let's say in this region, they like to eat a lot and they don't like that small portion of the meal. Or they have the, like in few days, we will be entering the holy month of Ramadan. So Ramadan is something that Islamic countries have. However, in the non-Islamic countries, it's not something in their culture. So when they are moving to the Islamic countries, they see, okay, the Muslims, for example, in this 1 month, they don't eat during the day. I will have to close my restaurant, for example, for lunch, and I can only open my restaurant after iftar, or basically when it's the evening time. And during the evening, basically, they usually have bigger meals. They usually have more portion in their meals. So they came up with the option of, let's say, all you can eat. So all you can eat is something that they needed to. It was an option that was a result of adapting to the wants, needs, and wants of the people in this country. So they had to do marketing for it. So they had to make payments for it, and they had to basically incur costs for them. Adaptation, it exemplifies the local responsiveness and is more appropriate in multi-domestic industries. Of course, adaptation is when, as we discussed, it's when you create the changes as per the needs of the people. Then I'm just going to read through a bit quicker because I want to make sure we finish this off today. Then you have the national preferences, you have the laws and regulations, you have the living standard and economic conditions, and you have the national infrastructure. These are all the things that will impact, and they will be the basis where you understand that you need to basically go according to the adaptation approach and not standardization. This also has its own advantages. It's meeting the needs of customer more precisely. So customers will be more interested in your product. Why? Because it's more closer to their interests. They enjoy unique appeal, and they comply to the government regulations. So this means that the government will not create any problems for you. Why? Because you're respecting the rules and regulations of the government. And you achieve greater success in combating customer resistance. Why? Because eventually customers are more interested in the products and services that you are offering. Okay, Mr. Nasser, the thing that you said about the Ramadan, let's talk about this at the end. Of course, I'm not really sure that what's the plan for the. I think that they'll be changing the timings. I'm also waiting for their for them to advise. But I'm sure that the timings will change. It will either be before iftar or it will be after iftar. I'm not really sure. But of course, all of you guys will be informed through email. Firms prefer standardization. Why? Because we said goal number one of all companies is to make profit. In order to make profit, you want to make sure that you have lower costs. Going back to the previous slide, we said that one of the advantages of standardization is cost reduction. Hence, firms prefer standardization. Adaptation is costly, which we discussed. It may require substantial changes to products. When you have substantial changes to the products, it means that you have to have changes in your manufacturing operations. It will be, you will have basically less options in terms of increasing the price. Why? Because you already have you are incurring higher costs. Your distribution will be affected. I'll give you an example. When, for example, you have a unique product and it's not changeable, and basically you don't need to keep changing it, you can send one whole, let's say, party or one whole ship to that country where you are sending the raw material or sending the final product. However, if your product keeps changing, you cannot at once send a whole lot of quantity. You will have to send in lesser quantities. Why? Because by the time this quantity will be all sold out, you will have a newer product. So again, you will have to basically ship your products to that host country or that host market. So even the distribution will be affected, and of course the marketing. You will have to pay more in terms of your marketing and communicating with your target market. Of course, this is not all the things that will be affected. When we are saying that you will have to change, a marketing plan is affecting everything in the organization and a company. So of course, even the labor charges and the human resources is different. Why? Because another thing that, let's say, will increase the cost will be R&D, research and development. When you have to constantly adapt to changes, you need an R&D. Basically, you need an active R&D division. because they constantly need to do research in the market and understand how the people are changing, and according to that change, how we can adapt our products and services accordingly. So you're talking about constant escalation of costs in that organization. And finally, costs add up across many national markets, which, of course, the more broader it is, the more, the higher, basically, the more changes there will be to the cost. There is an interesting diagram about in the car industry. It's pretty self-explanatory. Like, you have some car manufacturers that they decided that they want to stay local. So you don't even hear their names much. Like, for example, Vauxhall from United Kingdom, or Holden from Australia, or Daewoo from South Korea. Actually, Daewoo before, it used to be even global, but now it has decided to become local. So we're talking about now, so it's an example of a local, basically, marketing plan. Then we have the regional ones. The regional one is that they didn't go in all countries, but like, for example, they decided to go to, like, let's say, Europe only, or for example, South American market, or Australian market, or whatever. So anyhow, like Opel, GMC, Buick, Saturn, or Pontiac. Saturn, for example, what I know is that it's in North America only. And finally, you have the global. Global will be like Mercedes, BMW, Cadillac, Chevrolet, or even General Motors, which General Motors, of course, is the best example, because not only it's in the car manufacturing, even in the manufacturing of plane engines as well. Okay, let me see what you had to say. Marketing analysis. Yes, of course. It's the same thing that I said. The R&D is something that everyone has, but what we were talking, it was about the difference between standardization and even for the standardization, you need the R&D. But the cost of R&D in standardization, it's really not comparable with the cost in adaptation approach. Because in adaptation, it's constant change, whereas in the standardization, you really don't have this much of changes. Anyhow, the global branding, it's not only about products. It can be about anything. It's giving some examples. It says some well-known global brands include Hollywood movies, like, for example, Star Wars, or a few years ago where there was Lord of the Rings, which became a really good global brand, because you would see that even the sales of its books or even its toys or whatever, it was really on high demand. And for example, even pop stars, so even human beings can be global brands, like for example, Shakira as an example, or in terms of sports, David Beckham, or for those of you who are interested in, like, let's say Barcelona, Lionel Messi, or Real Madrid, where you have Cristiano Ronaldo. So these are also global brands. And you can see that even why are these global brands? Only we can say the MNEs can really understand the definition of and the basically the real worth of these people. Like, for example, the amount of money that, like, let's say, football stars such as, for example, Messi or Ronaldo are receiving from these MNCs can sometimes even exceed the amounts that they are receiving against their contracts. For example, like, let's say a big company will ask Lionel Messi to advertise for them, and they will pay them so much money. Why? Because they are global brands, and they are successful global brands. So everyone has a good vision towards them, and it will help in order to create a proper brand imaging. Why? Because when you see, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo using this specific, like, let's say, what do you call, shampoo, because he does the advertisement for, I don't know, for L'Oreal shampoo, of course. And so when usually people see that he's using this, so it will create some sort of a good image in the minds of people that, okay, since he's using that, it must be a good brand. Then you have personal care products like Gillette sensor blades, or in terms of toys where you have the Barbie dolls, which they are sold out in all countries of the world. You have credit cards, which is like Visa and MasterCard, which of course the credit card companies to some extent they're like a monopoly because they have such a powerful system that hardly other companies can compete with them. Like even big companies like let's say Amex, for example, American Express, which is a big company, and which I mean, and it's a strong company as well. But at the same time, it really cannot compete with Visa and Mastercard because the amount of expansion that these companies had, it's really difficult and unlikely for Amex, which is also a very big company, to compete with them as well. In food industry, like you have Cadbury chocolates. In beverages, like Perrier water, or furniture, IKEA, and electronics, like PlayStation. These are all global brands and examples of global brands. A strong global brand enhances the efficiency and effectiveness of marketing programs. Of course, it facilitates the ability to charge premium price. It gives the company the upper hand against resellers, and it stimulates brand loyalty and inspires trust and confidence in the product. Now, what does this mean? When you have a global brand, when you have a strong product, as the owner of this product, as the manufacturer of this product, as an organization who created this product, if your product has a proper imaging, if your product has a reputable global brand, it's really easy for you in order to set any price you want. Like, let's say, even if you put a high price for it, people are still willing to pay for it. If you are the Rolls-Royce company creating, like, let's say, Rolls-Royce Phantom, you have the upper hand to charge, like, let's say, I don't know, like, let's say $300,000 for a car that you are selling. However, if you are the Toyota company creating, like, let's say, the best, like, car that you have, like, for example, is a Toyota Land Cruiser, you cannot charge $300,000 for that car. Why? Because the power of your product is not compatible with what the Rolls-Royce is producing. So the better the image of your brand and your product, the easier it is for you to set prices. The easier it is for you to have the upper hand in terms of your negotiations with your resellers. Like, if you have a cheap product, you really don't have much to say. Whatever your resellers want, you have to just obey it. However, if your product is unique, they will come to you. They will request you to give them the product in order for them to resell it for you. And of course, you will have the brand loyalty, which we discussed in the beginning of this session, which I said that we will get into. This is what I meant. You will have the advantage of having a brand loyalty. And like let's say, for example, if Apple products, Apple already created a good reputation for itself through its laptops and, like, let's say, for example, iPods. So once it came with its iPhone, or once it came with its tablet, which is the iPad, maybe it really didn't need to advertise that much because it already had loyalty against their brand. Okay, so we move to the next slide. Okay, this is the cover page of Business Week, which is pretty interesting, and it's very self-explanatory. You can see the cans of Coca-Cola, which is from different countries, and you can see how, although it maintains the same theme, the same colors, the same size, the same even recipe for making the drink, but at the same time you can see that it has written the name in terms of the languages of the local languages of that host, let's say, location where it's moving to. And this is a good example and a clear example of adaptation, because it's adapting itself. It didn't just move in with the same thing and say, okay, it's a standardized, like, for example, approach. I don't need to change it. It's Coca-Cola in English. It doesn't matter if I'm moving to an Arabic country, if I'm moving to a Spanish-speaking country. This is what it is. So to some extent, it practiced the approach of adaptation. Even though maybe Coca-Cola's general approach will be standardization, but as we said, to some extent, you will need to and you will have to basically adapt to the needs and wants of those people in your segment market. This is just a chart showing the global brands by region. Like whereas in Asia, as you can see, unfortunately, it's only Japan and South Korea, but all of them are big companies, which we all know and heard of. It's Toyota, Honda, Samsung. Then when it comes to European brands, and of course this is 2007, so I'm sure that many of us, we have better examples than maybe in a 2013 version of this chart, it would be a lot different. Like let's say, for example, in US brand, which is here, I think, like for example, Apple should have been somewhere at least amongst the 5 right here. And because at that time in 2007, there was no tablets and there was no iPhones. So Apple was only basically selling computer products. Then we have the designing global products with global teams, which gives the example of Boeing, for example, creating its one of its models throughout the design teams from different regions of the world. Until the 1990s, product and development and design was a sequential process, usually based in a single country. As we discussed, everything started from localized companies and localized strategies. Then it slowly shifted to becoming global and internationalized. So it's saying that even product design and even product development process, even until the 1990s, which may sound surprisingly because 1990s is only 20 or 30 years ago, which is not really so far away. But even until then, usually the products were designed and developed locally within a single country. However, today there are many firms that develop global products, international products, that are intended for the world, that are intended for the international markets, through virtual global teams. Virtual global teams, as you can see from the name virtual is when, for example, what we are doing right now. We are having a class, basically, from different parts of the world. Like I may be in one city and you guys are in different cities and we are all gathered in one virtual location to carry out something, to carry out a goal. So basically, the virtual teams, the virtual global teams, they were the set of experts from different countries. Like for example, in the case of Boeing 777, it was like a virtual teamwork from Japan, United States, and Europe, and they put their basically skills together, and they came up with this product design. Okay, so if it's okay for everyone, we'll just kind of have a 5 minutes break. For those of you who want to go for your prayers, then we'll just be back in 5 minutes. Okay, now I hope everyone's back. So we are just gonna move to the next slide. There are factors that affect the international pricing. Now, when it comes to the pricing, there are some factors that affect basically this process. The nature of the product or the industry, which is a specialized or highly advanced product or an industry with few competitors, can facilitate charging a higher price. This was the example which I gave, for example, for Rolls-Royce. I said that Rolls-Royce, it's a sophisticated car, it's a specialized and it's a highly advanced product. Not only there is few competitors, I think there is no competitors, even because other than, I mean, after Rolls-Royce, like let's say one of the best cars in the same, let's say, class would be, for example, let's say Bentley. But Bentley, I think it's nowhere comparable with like Rolls-Royce. So Rolls-Royce really has maybe no competitors at all, so they can really have the upper hand in charging a higher price, or in other words, charging any price that they want. and still they have their own customers. Why? Because there are real rich people out there who are willing to pay any amount for such car. Then another thing that is important when considering the process of pricing is the location of the product facility. When you are located and your manufacturing is related to customers or in countries with low-cost labor or taxes, like for example, you really have the option of giving lower costs. This is something, and lower prices. This is something that many manufacturers are doing, even if the intention is not to basically to set lower prices. In order to have higher profits, they do this. They move out to countries where there is no taxes. They move out to countries where there is cheaper labor, or even they are closer to their target market, so they don't have to pay for the transportation and high distribution costs. So this is another factor that basically that affects the pricing. Then we have the types of distribution system. It really depends on what product you're selling and how the distribution is. Like for example, let's say for dairy products, like if you are a manufacturer of dairy products, like let's say milk and yogurts and things that have, like let's say, a very short basically use date, and they only have, like let's say, 3-4 days of use dates, and after that they will be expired. And at the same time, they have to be delivered and distributed in refrigerated cars and planes or whatever. They really have a high cost of distribution, and it's really difficult as well, because the slightest delay will have the whole cargo expired, and they will just have to throw out everything, and it's not usable anymore. So channels in some countries are very complex. Some distributors mark up prices substantially. Of course, in this specific example, it's referring to the subsidiaries and the intermediaries and the people who just come in between. Like let's say, for example, when it comes to buying the agricultural products from the farmers. You see that there are so many hands in the middle, like the person who buys it from the farmer, then the other person who buys it from this one, and then eventually you see until it reaches the end user, there is like let's say 5 or 6 intermediaries that each of these will be charging their own premiums, and at the end user will be buying the good, like let's say 10 times higher than the original price. So this is another factor that does affect the pricing. So for a company to succeed in this is to eliminate these extra intermediaries in order to be able to set a lower price. And of course, you have some issues regarding the foreign markets when it comes to their currency value or the purchasing power and the distribution infrastructure. These all affect the pricing strategy when it comes to setting the prices again. This is just a diagram for an extra information. We're just going to read through it because it's pretty long, but and honestly it's really simple and self-explanatory. If there was any explanations required, anyone can ask, and I'll just be more than happy to explain it. It discusses about the internal and external factors that affect the international prices. To some extent, we discussed that in the previous slide. This is just going to be elaborating more on the same thing. Internal to the firm, so basically the issues that are internal that affect the international, that affect the pricing is one, the management's profit and market share expectations. So how much profit does the manager expect? If they want more profit, they will have to charge higher prices. However, if they are not greedy, they can just simply have lower prices. Cost of manufacturing, marketing, and other valuable activities. So how much is the cost of getting this raw material in and basically manufacturing it? That also depends on the pricing. The degree and the extent of control of the management desires over price. So how much does the manager really have control over setting the prices? Because as I said, like let's say, if you guys remember when we were discussing the thing about the centralized economies, I said that the government also interferes in terms of the pricing. and the government interferes in the economy. So, like, let's say, for example, the economy, the government closes the hand of the manufacturer and says, okay, you are the seller of like, let's say, for example, I don't know, like, let's say electronics. Okay, they set a target price for you. They set a price for you. They said you cannot exceed the price from this, like, let's say, from this price. So the management of that company, they really don't have that much control in setting the price. Why? Because there is a government pressure. If you remember in the last session, we discussed the 5 Michael Porter forces. One of the forces was, we said that the 6th force, which many people believe, was the government regulation. So if the government closes your hand, you have no power to say anything, because although you are the management of your company, but at the end of the day, you are working under the power of a government, which is running the whole country which you are working in. So if they close your hand in setting the price, you really don't have that much control and power. There are also some external factors like customer expectations, purchasing power, and sensitivity to the price increase. Sensitivity, I'm just going to explain this one, which may be unfamiliar to some of you because the rest of it is easy to understand. Sensitivity to the price increases, it goes back to the sensitivity analysis. Sensitivity analysis measures the extent that people will be willing to pay a price for a good. For example, if I want to buy a laptop, let's say I would say that the laptop which I want to buy, I'll pay for it maximum, like, let's say $1,000. Then you say, okay, even if it's $1,200, I will still buy a laptop. However, if it's $1,201, I will not buy it anymore because that's above my limit. So the economists, they usually study it, and this comes into in the form of a chart, which is called sensitivity analysis or price sensitivity analysis. So it measures the willingness of customers to pay for a specific product, or basically it measures the maximum amount that a customer is willing to pay in order to buy a product. So this is an external factor. Then you have the nature of competitors offering pricing and prices and strategies. So it also affects your strategies. How are your strategies? How are your pricing strategies and your offerings? You have the international customer cost, which goes down into details of product package modifications, labeling, and marketing requirements. You have the documentations, which is about the certificate of origin. Because if you know, for those of you who are practicing like in general trading companies and imports and exports, there are some costs that affect the final cost of a product, which you don't see. For example, if you are just going to the electronics shop next to your house in order to buy a Sony LCD television, you may think that the only cost that that shop had to pay for was to simply buy that TV from, let's say, the manufacturer and just sell it to you. Whereas that's not the case. In order for this cargo to come from Japan to, like, let's say, for example, Malaysia, in order for you to buy it, that importer had to pay for some charges, for some documentation charges. For example, they had to go to the local chamber of commerce to get the certificate of origin. They had to pay some banking fees. So all these things are additional costs that that importer had to pay in order to import that LCD TV for you to buy. So if you are paying, let's say, $500 US in order to buy that LCD TV, and you can see that, okay, the cost of this TV importing from Sony, from Japan directly, is only $300 US. So does this mean that the shop is making a profit of $200? No. Why? Because that shop had to pay, for example, for some other extra costs that finally affected that final price. So this is an external factor that affects the pricing. You have the financing cost, which is similar to the banking cost, which we said above. You have the packing and container charges, same thing. It has to do with your transportation costs. You have the shipping costs, which has to do with the inspection of the cargo with the warehousing, with the freight forwarders fee, with the truck fees, or even the labor fees that the laborers have to basically move the products from here to there. You have the insurance costs. So all these things are external factors that affect the pricing. Then you have the landed cost. What is the landed cost? Costs that are incurred once the goods is in that place, which is like, for example, the tariffs, the import tariffs, the custom duty tariffs, the taxes, basically whatever charges that you will have to pay in that destination, or the warehousing charges, which is giving the example right here. Then you have the importer's costs, which to some extent we elaborated on the above part, which had to do with the international customer cost. It's the value-added cost and other applicable taxes. This is, of course, this has to do only with countries that have taxes. Some countries that don't even have the taxes, like, for example, UAE. Then you have local intermediaries. This is the one we discussed in the previous slide, which is a real headache to some of these basically manufacturers and to some of these producers, because they somehow affect a higher price and you really don't have much control on it. Of course, this what I'm talking about is the intermediaries of buying the raw material for the manufacturers, whereas this intermediary is referring to the finished products to the final customers. So it's talking about a different level right now. Then you have the cost of financing inventory. You have the anticipated fluctuations in currency exchange rates. And I would even add another one. You will have the anticipated fluctuations in terms of changes of law. I mean, changes in the laws and regulations. Like you have, for example, if in your country all of a sudden the tax rates goes higher, so and you will have to pay higher tax to the government for the sales that you have. So that will affect the final price. You will have to give a higher price in order to still maintain the profit that you were expecting from your business. I hope this was clear, because it's pretty much self-explanatory and it's extra information, which is really interesting. So I thought that it's good if I have this. So if for extra reading, it will be valuable for you guys. Then this was just going to be the steps of international price setting, because the previous slide was about the factors that affect it. Now it's saying, okay, fine. Now we want to set the price. What are the steps? Step one, you estimated the landed price of the product. You estimated the price that the importer or the distributor is willing to charge after it considers its own profit margin. Step three, I'm just going through it very quick because it's not really part of your course. It's just extra information, but I want to read through it so it's clear for everyone. Step three will be estimating the target price range for the end user. So this goes into the factor of basically the ceiling price and the floor price. The floor price will be the lowest price that you can basically charge and you can set, and the ceiling price will be the maximum. This goes back to this price sensitivity analysis which we discussed. And it's really terms that are interesting to know. I mean, for those of you with the economics background, I'm sure that you have heard of these terms, because in economics, these are issues that are really important, because pricing is actually a very important chapter in economics, because it's really important for a company to do proper pricing. Because if they go too low, then for sure they will run out of, they will be out of the business and they will go bankrupt, because they will not be able to cover up their expenses and their variable costs. However, and if they are too high, they will lose the market, because people may not be willing to pay that much for the goods of that company. So it's really important to understand the floor price and the ceiling price. Then step 4 will be to assess the company's sales potential. So what is the capacity of your company that you are trying to give out the prices? Then selecting suitable pricing strategy. Okay, this I'm just going to explain it a bit because it's interesting. We have 3 types of pricing strategy. The third one, I'm not really sure if it's so common. The first and second one is really more common, and you see it more. And it's practiced more common. So you select this. You select a suitable pricing strategy based on the corporate goals and the preferences. One of it is the rigid cost plus pricing, and the other one is flexible cost plus pricing. When you have the rigid pricing strategy, this means that your prices are fixed. You're not willing to negotiate that much. You can see this in luxury goods. For example, when you go to the shop Mont Blanc, like where they sell those expensive pens, you don't throughout the year you don't see them putting up sales or clearances or anything. Why? Because they don't need to put offers. Why? Because their customers are rich people, and rich people, they don't care for buying a good during its sales time or festival time or clearance time, because they are willing to pay that much money for it. So these companies usually they go with the rigid strategy. You have the flexible strategy for most of the other goods, basically other goods that are targeting the middle class and the lower class. So they'll be paying, or even technological goods. Like after a technology comes in, some companies, let's give the example of Apple and Nokia. Both of these are mobile phone manufacturers. However, they have different strategies. When it comes to Nokia, you will see some models of Nokia right now in the market. You can buy a brand new phone for, let's say, $30 US. But this $30 US phone that you are buying right now, 10 years ago, it was $300 US, for example. Okay, and even today, for example, that Nokia manufacturer is still producing that phone, but at a lower price. Why? This means that it has a flexible pricing. However, Apple, it has a rigid pricing. Why? Because it's really not willing to decrease its price that much. If you see iPhone 4, when they were selling their iPhone 4 at let's say a target price, at a price which they set, then after maybe a little change that they made to the price, then immediately when they came up with the new phone, they no longer produce the other phone anymore. Even if you can find a brand new one in a shop, it's a phone that the shopkeeper has kept since 2 years ago. Or else right now you cannot find a brand new iPhone 4. Why? Because the strategy of Apple is not to produce the same good and simply reduce the price. They say, okay, fine. iPhone 4, right now we're moving to iPhone 5. Okay, so no more production to iPhone 4. So whatever iPhone 4 that you see in the market right now, it's whatever that was left in the stock. You don't see any brand new iPhone 4 that is produced let's say 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So this is the different strategies in pricing. And then you have the incremental pricing, which we will have the explanation later on, which is just about understanding the term. I don't think it's really much practice. And then in step 6, you check the consistency with the current prices. You see how the feedback of the people is in terms of your the prices that you set. So and then finally you implement the pricing strategy and tactics. And so basically, finally, when you see the feedback and you are satisfied with the feedback, so you say, okay, this is my strategy now, and this is a strategy that I will be using from now on. So it will be the final step to setting your basically price. Now, this is the explanation which I just said regarding the pricing strategies. This is the only important part of the previous slide, because that may come in your final exam. The rest of it is really not that much important. For example, I'm not going to ask you give me all the steps that in fixing the price. So as we discussed, I'm just going to read through it because we already explained it. Rigid cost plus pricing is setting a fixed price for all the export markets by adding a flat percentage to the domestic price to compensate for the added cost of doing business abroad. So you have a fixed basically rate. However, the flexible one is when you set the price to accommodate the local market and competitive conditions. So the Nokia phone from $300 to $30, why did it go down to $30? Because if it still wanted to sell that phone for $300, no one would buy that phone, because there are other competitors that are giving better phones at lower prices. So in order to maintain in the competitive condition, they will have to be flexible and lower the price, like let's say from that $300 to $30. And it also gave the examples such as customer purchasing power, the demand, and competitive prices, which we explained the competitive prices. And finally, the incremental pricing, which is setting the price to cover only variable costs, not the fixed costs, because in this case, the firm assumes that fixed costs are already paid from sales in the firm's home country or other countries. I don't really see this practical. I mean, I don't think we really see this in today's world, and that companies will only charge to cover up their variable costs. Maybe you can say when government sells like subsidized products, maybe in that case we can say that that would be the example. Or else proper MNCs and private companies, they really won't be much interested in this pricing strategy. Moving to the next slide. Then we have some strategies to combat international price escalation, because there is, I mean, all economies are to some extent facing this threat of increases in the price. So what are the strategies that they have at their disposal in order to control this and in order to fight this problem? One is to shorten the distribution channel, that is to bypass some intermediaries in the channel. This is the example which I gave you. I said, for example, if the farmer is selling, it wants to sell its goods, like let's say wheat products. I mean, it's wheat yield. So so let's say a farmer has 500 tons of wheat, and it wants to sell it. These intermediaries keep on buying it and selling it to one another and adding premiums. And by the time it gets to the end user, it's so expensive. So in order to fight this problem, usually the issue with agricultural products, it goes back to governments, because usually governments control this. So so the government authorities usually try to cut the intermediaries from the middle. So the distance between the producer, which is the farmer, and the end user, which is us, it will be less. So we really won't be facing that much of price increase. Another strategy would be to redesign your program and create a simple one. It gave the example of Whirlpool. Whirlpool is the company that creates, like, let's say, washing machines. I will give the example of, like, let's say, cars, for example. If you are interested to buy, let's say, Toyota Camry, for example, you have the option of buying a Toyota Camry for, let's say, $30,000, which will be the full option model. But still, maybe you are interested in Toyota Camry, but you don't have that much money. So they redesigned that product, and basically they have a cheaper model, which will be the basic model. It will not have some of the extra luxury, like let's say options that are there in the full option. However, the good thing is that you can have the same car for a cheaper price. Then you have the CKD option, is to ship products unassembled as parts and components, and once it reaches to the destination, then in that phase you can start to install the good and you can sell it. This happens usually in the car industry and in the industries where the products are usually large in size. Like let's say, for example, tractors or mine vehicles, like these big trucks that are working in mining sector. Usually, these types of businesses they practice the CKD option. Or you can have the product reclassified using a different tariff classification to qualify for lower tariffs. This is really complicated, and this really is not an option that all businesses can practice. Like, let's give the example for medicine industry. Um, let's assume that a country has two different tariffs for medicine. Like, let's say they would say the medicines um, that are used for anesthesia and for operations, it will have, like, let's say 20% tariff, and the medicine that is the more common medicine, like adult cold or, I don't know, Panadols or whatever, they will have 10% tariff. So a medicine manufacturer who's creating some medicine that has those substances that are used for operations and anesthesia, if they still want to move into that market and they want to pay lesser tariffs and lesser basically import tariffs, they can simply remove those substances from that pill and from that medicine and import it as a common medicine and inform the doctor and say, okay, listen, this medicine right now, it does not have these substances. So if you want to use it for operations, you have to use it with these complements, with these extra, like use it with this, for example, other medicine. It will have the same effect. So what did they do? They redesigned and they reclassified their product in order to classify their product in another category to pay lesser tariff. I'm not sure if this was really understandable, the example, but this is really unique. I mean, I don't think businesses really practice this strategy for fighting the price escalation problem. And finally, you have the moving the production or sourcing to another country to take advantage of lower labor costs or favorable currency rate. This, we can have the same example that we had for outsourcing, or the example that we gave, I think, in the first or second session for Harley-Davidson, where it moved to India because of the cheap labor. Or we gave, again, the same example of Nike producing its shirts and T-shirts and, let's say, shoes and sneakers in countries such as China and Taiwan and other countries where they have cheaper labors, and at the same time they have low currency rates. So, and of course, low currency rates means that you can easily pay a good salary to those laborers at, like, for example, you are a company based in the U.S. with U.S. dollars, and you want to pay the salaries of your laborers in Taiwan. Because of the low currency rate, maybe with 100 U.S. dollars, you can easily pay them a very good salary. Whereas 100 U.S. dollars in the U.S., it's not even a proper salary. I mean, it's not even the amount that you will pay for someone for 1 week work, let alone for, let's say, 1 month. Then we move to transfer pricing. The pricing of intermediate or finished products exchanged among the subsidiaries and affiliates of the same corporate family located in different countries. This has to do with the like to do the pricing among the subsidiaries. Like you give them the open hand to set the prices, and basically this is the same thing as the autonomy of the subsidiaries, as we discussed earlier today. That they will have the power to some extent to make their own decisions, which this may be one of them. You're transferring this basically power to them. Maybe used to repatriate profits from countries that restrict MNEs from taking their earnings out of the country. Yes, because this exists. Some countries they don't allow the MNCs or even a specific company to move out the investment. To move out the money from the country. They say that, okay, when you are making money in our country, you have to spend it here. You have to keep it, and when you can reinvest, but you cannot take out the money. It's restricted. Or it may be used to shift the profits out of the high corporate tax country into a lower corporate tax one. This is a strategy for countries to run away from taxes, as we also give the example, thereby increasing the company-wide profits. So it's about manipulation of basically of course it's legal, it's not illegal. So it's just how you are just playing around with your pieces. It's like playing chess. So it really matters how they combat this situation. Unfortunately, we still have how much more? We have 5 more slides to go. Okay. If it's okay with you guys, we're just gonna leave off from here. I wanted to finish this slide, of course, today. But anyhow, next session, before you start the presentations, I'm just gonna cover these 5 slides quick, and we're just gonna have the presentation. So, Mr. Nasser, I think he sent me the first draft. If any of you guys, you don't have to send me the first draft. If you like, you can send it to me, and I can just go through it. And if not, we can, inshallah, just have you guys do the presentation next week. As discussed, please be careful. You don't need to give me any Microsoft Word or any essays. All you have to do is to have the PowerPoint presentation, and at the end of the presentation, you have to just email it to me. And don't forget to have your references, and don't forget to give me your work breakdown as well. I want to know what each one of you has dedicated for the project. Okay. So, was there any questions? Okay, I guess not. All right, have a great evening, everyone. So, inshallah, I'll see you guys next week.